I think 2030, you will see very few humans in frontline support.
There's a million ways to go. How do you think about the tech and which ones to go after first?
AI has made a lot of things better, but I think it's actually caused probably the whole industry to take on more than it can chew. There are people who are literally like, they've become so good at doing support and they're like product experts now that they are the ones writing the support articles that then fuel the AI agent. Humans aren't going away, but their job might change.
I would imagine that at some point, we're gonna have humans that are just the fact checkers for the AI,
Yeah.
right? To see when it's going off the rails. What are those flags that can tell someone that this might be going off the rails?
Actually, a lot of different things that you can implement. They fall into a few different buckets. One of them is
All right, we are here with John Wang, co-founder and CTO of Assembled. Welcome.
thank you. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Great. Okay, so let's get right into it. Assembled is a platform for customer service.
Yeah.
With AI at the core.
Yeah.
But not always, because you guys started in 2018.
No, we started and we built out a system that helps you figure out how many people you need at any given time. So when we started, it was actually, there's only people really that can solve your questions. And the problem was when you got to 1,000 people or, 5,000 people on your support team, you can't just have them all go 9 to 5. You need specialization and you need to figure out how many people do I need at this specialization at any particular time, which is a very difficult problem when you do it at scale.
So then LLMs hit the scene.
Yeah.
What happens? Like, what's the reaction at that point? Like, is it an oh shit or is it a, oh, this is our savior?
Honestly, both. When we first saw it, it was like the 5 stages of grief where it's like, oh my God, our company's gone. And then we were like, hold on, wait, we're in a really good position to actually make use of these LLMs because we had spent 4 or 5 years up to that point building out super enterprise customers like Robinhood and Stripe and Salesforce and DoorDash. And like we had Fortune 500 companies and had access to all these support teams. So then we were like, wait, we should be the people who help you build LLMs into your support team. And that's what we ended up doing.
What was the internal debate like? And how big were you guys at that point, employee-wise?
Yeah, we were around 60 folks at that time.
Enough people that there's going to be dissent no matter what the goal is, right? Whatever the decision is.
Totally.
Like if you think back of it, what were the strongest cases one way or the other?
Well, there's a lot of strong reactions, especially from the engineering team. I think at the time, we already felt like we were so bootstrapped on engineering capacity and like sales capacity and like capacity everywhere because we were like selling all these deals. And everyone was like, why would we work on this LLM stuff? It's not even, there's no clear path for productization here while we have like all these problems at home. And so there was a big camp here. And then there was a big camp of people who are like, actually maybe a smaller camp of people who are like, no, we should go do this. And one engineer actually built out a hackathon project that was like a Slack bot that answered questions for you that ended up being converting into our first AI product.
So it was a hackathon project that like got you guys more comfortable with the idea that like we can implement this into the larger product and be the people that bring this to market.
Totally. Yeah. And we may have poked a little bit at like making sure that this hackathon project does learn, like
right.
enough hackathon projects come along that use LLMs, but we were very excited because of all of the like customers that we already had and all of the distribution that we had. And I think our approach is now very different than a AI native startup where you just like don't know as much about support, but like I think we come from a very, very support heavy background,
right?
And that actually changes the product a lot.
So okay, you're doing all the scheduling and you're helping large enterprise level companies do that. Now you start building this product on the side as a customer support agent in the form of what, chat at first, or like not voice yet? That wasn't out.
Yeah, it was not voice. We actually built our first product was a agent copilot. And then we built a chat bot, and then we built a voice bot. And the way that we did it was interesting. I don't know if I would do it again this way, but there were ups and downs to it, actually. So myself and 2 other engineers and 1 business person kind of like broke off, and we like literally put ourselves into a room that we called the dungeon. And we just hacked there for like months and months and months. And we didn't like come out. We had like these two speakers that were blasting like Martin Garrix. We just like built the product from there. But that caused a lot of tension in our company because they were like, why is our CTO like doing this random
Unresponsive on Slack.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like that was part of the tension at the company of like, should we do this new LLM thing or should we kind of continue down our enterprise route?
Yeah. So you had roadmap plans for where the product was going to go, and this kind of bifurcated. This was like the point where you had to decide, are we going this way or not? I was about to say what a kind of blessing it is to have a company that's established enough that you can peel that level of executive off to go do this for someone. But it sounds like it still was a pain point, even with the level of support that you guys had.
I think it's always a pain point when a leader or like someone influential at the company decides to do something that's like almost completely different, especially when there's like a lot of stuff going on, right? But I do think we were in a good enough spot where it wasn't like, hey, the company's going to collapse. It was just like more pain gets passed around.
Was there conversations around this potentially opening up more go-to-market approaches with different ICPs, smaller companies? Like, I don't know if you want to build this thing and pass it off to a massive company to test it.
Totally.
Right? So did it open up ideas of going to, mid-market and below?
We definitely experimented. We were like, hey, can we make this thing entirely self-serve? Because our first product was entirely enterprise. And like, I think there's this big flip during when ChatGPT came out, when like everyone who's consumer wanted to be enterprise and everyone who's enterprise wanted to be consumer. And it was like, hey, now is the time to just rewrite everything. So we tried that and we were like, oh crap, we're not actually that good of a consumer company. We like know how to do sales and we know how to do all this go-to-market stuff. So what we ended up doing was we actually did go much lower market. Like if you consider our kind of workforce management existing product as enterprise, we actually now target mid-market as for our AI products. But it was not as like, it wasn't like literally you're going to go self-serve like a one person shops.
So when you walked out of that room 3 months later, however long it was, what did you have to show for it? Like, did you actually have a working product at that point?
Totally. We had a working product and we had a few like early experimental customers and we had a lot of good traction. We basically thought of it as like YC. I had done YC back in winter 14. So honestly, a really long time ago at this point. And I remember a lot of things about it, but the main thing was like this kind of like hype cycle, like what you're doing on a day to day. And you go and you're like, we had a little board, a whiteboard, and we would like physically plot, like, here's where our customer count is. And this was back when we were like building e-commerce stuff back in 2014. And then I was like, we should do the same thing because when you physically plot your usage numbers, that's very different than like looking at a graph. You actually have to like actively engage and be like, oh, our usage number either did not go up or yes, it went up a lot.
Right.
And it gives you a different perspective on it.
Okay, so you guys walk out of this room, you got this product now. You start going, you already have a couple customers on it. They were probably small, like mid-market level.
Yeah.
Does this change because like with LLMs coming out, I equate it back to like early days of internet. There's probably like SEO agencies that were like launching at the beginning of the internet going like, you need to use this for 12 months. Yeah, but like, make me a blog,
Totally.
right? Was there a point where you saw the sales cycle for what you're selling on the AI side ramp up because people are just getting more comfortable with AI?
Yes. And actually, we've been through a few different cycles already on the AI front. I think the first cycle was a lot of people just being like, what is this? I don't know what this is. Then there was a period of time, I want to say it was like late 2023, maybe early 2024, where people were like, oh, like my executives are telling me I really need to do AI. So I'm going to buy literally anything that has AI on it. And the sales cycle ramped up really quickly. Then it was like, wait, that's dumb. Hey, I actually need to buy something reasonable here. And then we saw a sales spike for, hey, if you have a differentiated approach on AI, not just like sticking AI in front of everything, that's when you get the sales cycle. And now I think we're in a place where most people understand what AI is. Most people are looking for kind of how do you best integrate with our systems? Who's going to help me get there the best? And who's going to provide nuance into how we actually add AI into how we work day to day?
Do you find that more customers are coming in and saying, what's the impact here? Like, what do we expect? What does success look like? Because I feel like, well, at least what we see at Cadre on our side as we consult, we have a lot of companies that are private equity backed. We know that what's happening in the boardroom is they're saying every time, like, what's your AI strategy?
Yeah.
And it's not a really great answer to be like, well, my marketing person's got a couple tools and my, product person has some tools
Yeah.
without having a strategy of, all right, if we implement this, it's going to save here or there, and we expect to be able to maybe it's grow without this much headcount next year, whatever it is. Do you see more of that happening as we've gotten more mature from like just anybody going and buying it to probably a more refined sales cycle?
I think definitely. I think people now expect certain baseline levels of what's deflection and resolution rate can you actually do. Um, that's anywhere from like the low end being like 40-50% all the way to like 80 or 90% resolution rate, depending on your like this types of inquiries that come in, right? And I think people are much more specific about like, I want to be hitting this and I don't want to have hallucinations.
Yes.
I don't want to, have my customer that, spends $1 million with me go through the whole like rigmarole of like, please escalate to a human. What's your problem? Please escalate to, like they are much more discerning now when you buy software.
So, okay, LLMs come out, you probably walked out of that room with a chat feature, not voice.
Yeah.
Voice starts hitting the scene and all these different platforms
Yeah.
are doing voice. Was there another conversation of, do we get into this or not?
It was less a conversation and more just like we built a demo and we built a really freaking awesome demo. And I think this is how our company more operates is instead of like a bunch of conversation, it's just like someone who has a lot of wherewithal comes in and it's just like, I'm just going to try it.
Yeah.
And actually we built it off of GPT real time. And so it was full speech to speech. And this was pretty early on in like 2024 sometime. And it was such an amazing experience where you just like call the phone. But the problem was we started like implementing this and productionalizing it with a bunch of people. And we realized the real-time speech to speech just does not hold up under enterprise stress. And then we actually had to go build out the whole, speech text to speech pipeline.
Dig in a little deeper. What's the enterprise stress that is causing it to fail?
Let's say that you call at your car wash. And it was one of our real customers like runs and operates like hundreds of car washes. And you're like, and you start talking in Spanish about having to cancel your car wash membership because you bought it from this other website and it didn't quite have the same membership specs as you expected on this other website. And the enterprise, like what might happen with a normal chatbot is like, oh, let me pull out some articles and let me see if this is there, right? And you could pull out an article quite frequently, and like in this particular case, there's probably no article that tells you this.
Right.
So you're going to either hallucinate and be like, hey, like, blah 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 blah, and like complete junk nonsense, or you can be like, I don't know. Or in the case where like what enterprise actually want is like, hey, this is something that needs to get escalated to human. I want these 3 pieces of information from you to give me the best possible handoff to the right agent, like not just a normal agent, but like an agent who specializes in memberships, because this person is buying a membership, is a paying customer, and has intent to buy or do something, right? And that should route me to the right person. Now, that is not something that just comes out of the box with GPT real time, and you actually need to build that on top.
One of the things that I thought was a really interesting use case that you've described is being able to route it to the right agent for that problem.
Yeah.
How is AI getting that information? Is that a admin level, in the platform saying, John's the best person for this? Or is it just listening and learning as to which agents handle certain things the best?
I think the best AIs do both. because I think that on one hand, there's a lot of context in people's brains that actually is very, very helpful. That's why humans do so well in support because they just like soak up all this context, right? But on the other hand, AI systems do well when you can look over a bunch of data and you can like ingest it. Or if you can run a system and start ingesting memories and like extra context about a person. And so what we do is we actually do both, right? We pull in information about like who are good agents to do XYZ. And we also have data that has come from admins who are like, hey, this person has these skills. And you can actually combine them really well too. Because your AI can be like, I think Bob is really good at speaking Japanese. I don't know. Like, can you confirm that? Or Bob, can you confirm that? And that makes the system a lot better than just either guessing or having to wait on a human to give you all the information.
When you're thinking about your roadmap for the tech side of this, I mean, there's almost endless ways to go, right? I mean, so is it hard to plan? Because in my mind, I'm going, man, what you just said goes, well, why don't we have a scorecard? And maybe you guys already do this, but like, wouldn't a sales leader want a scorecard of how everybody's doing across the board? And wouldn't they want to know who, just there's a million ways to go. How do you think about the tech and which ones to go after first?
Yeah, it's a great question. And honestly, it's one of those things that AI has made a lot of things better, but I think it's actually caused probably the whole industry to take on more than it can chew. Because actually, the hard part isn't like the coding part. It's like the right after you've coded it and built it and it's in production and you have to like launch it to a user and the user's like, I have this config that's different. Um, and we've definitely fallen victim to chewing off a lot more than we could have done. But I think now we are coming back into we have a few different areas where we really believe that we can provide a lot of value, and we're focusing on those. One of them is voice, because we think that there's not very many people who do a really good support voice system. One of them is in this kind of like holistic understanding of when you should go to a human versus when you should go to an AI. I think a lot of the kind of like new AI startups that do support, that automation number, they're trying to jack it up as high as freaking possible, right? And that's not actually what most people want, right? As to what you said earlier.
Yeah, the point I had, we were talking off camera earlier, is I have there's a company that I'm close with that tried to implement voice agents to handle inbound calls for existing patients. It was healthcare, so it's existing patients. A lot of times it would be like refills or something like that it's going to handle, which should be very easy. They could not get this thing from an existing, this wasn't like they were using retail or something or they were using an existing platform built for this with SOC 2 and HIPAA and everything, and they could not get it to not say the person's first and last name every time. Something so simple as like, just say the first name, and they're like, no problem. Bill Smith is like, so there's that. And then like they couldn't tell the difference between twins or just little things that you're like, man, how has this part not gotten figured out yet if you're on the market? But I think to your point, it's very easy to roll out features now, whether those are working. It's like rolling out a custom GPT.
Yeah.
Well, it's got to work at probably 99% accuracy before someone actually starts using it. First time you get a wrong answer, you're like, this thing sucks. Let's move on.
I think the entire industry is obsessed with these feature build outs because they're easier to like roll out, and less obsessed. Well, I depends on the company, but less obsessed overall with providing really good, high quality like basics, like the fundamentals. It's like if you go talk to anyone who plays baseball and you talk to like their dad or their grandpa, you know what they're gonna say. It's like, you got to focus on your fundamentals, right? Your grip and like the way you're looking. And I think that is true also of AI in a lot of ways, because we have a lot of really difficult questions that come in, and actually how long it takes between you stopping the conversation and the AI starting, or like how you answer a slightly nuanced question, or kind of like not hanging up in the middle of things, like that has a huge impact on the end result.
And then you've got instances where someone calls in with something that definitely requires human empathy. And
Yeah.
so you probably need to train it to say, do not try to answer this question. This is when to hand off.
100%. We had this. We actually have a customer where they're an e-commerce customer. They sell women's garments, and they had a case where someone was like, "Hey, can I extend my return window?" And I'm so thankful that this person was like, "The reason why is I have a domestic violence case in the court right now, and I've been back and forth between the hospital and the courts, and I haven't been able to think about this return, and I just need like a 5-day extension." Thankfully, our system was like flagged this and was like, "Hey, this needs to go to an agent immediately." And human agent, not AI. And I think that's also one of those cases where it's like, yeah, that's not something you want your AI handling.
What an egregious use of AI to try to empathize with that person and be like, "I'm so sorry." Like, I mean, right? So you guys were prepared for that,
Yes.
that type of scenario.
Yeah.
That's the fine-tuning component of just getting that right. Did that happen before you like, did you think about that human empathy side of it before it went to market, or was that something that came about in just, like, learning and being like, "Oh, shit, this is a use case came up, and, like, we gotta figure this part out."
It's both a positive and a negative for us because we've definitely thought of that beforehand, and it meant that our we were a lot more cautious actually to begin with. And now we actually have a tuning mechanism as to like how cautious you should be. Do you want to be incredibly cautious, or you want to just like we call it containment focus,
Mm.
which is just like, you want to give as many AI answers as possible. But we generally, and most of our customers tend to be much, much more like on the cautious side because we don't want to be the ones who are providing a terrible human experience and back and forth
Right.
when, we all know what it's like to have bad support.
And I would imagine that a lot of these companies, they're not just putting this in and going, "All right, fire 5 people," right? It's like they're figuring out, "Hey, did these people move to another part of the organization?" But
Yeah.
I would imagine there's a time period where I'd rather have these people sitting there with nothing to do while AI is answering the calls and be the backup in case it flows through.
Yeah.
Because like you said, there's probably a lot of promises out there when it comes to how much this is going to handle versus I think there was a study that like 79% of people grew more frustrated with the chatbot or the AI, and 80% of them were like, "Well, I had to talk to a human anyway," so it was the use.
I think there's this really I've thought a lot about what are humans going to do, and I think actually something that people might not know is that most support teams already have built-in layers of escalation. So there's like tier 1 support, which oftentimes is the stuff that you like when you call and you get an Indian or Philippine call center, that's often tier 1 support and it's very, very cheap. Um, but that's not where it stops. There's like multiple tiers of escalations above that. And the tiers of escalation actually, like you basically are thinking more. Tier 2 support is usually like, "Hey, how do I handle this escalation? What do I do about, if someone calls in with, a domestic abuse case," things like that.
Yeah.
There's also tiers above that where people are actually thinking about how do I tune systems? Like what types of support requests am I getting all the time? And like, how do I go and update our systems or update our knowledge base to do that better? There are people who are literally like, they've become so good at doing support and they're like product experts now that they are the ones writing the support articles that then fuel the AI agents. So in a sense, like, you know, humans aren't going away, but their job might change, and it might change quite a bit. But I think the stuff that humans still provide is a lot of context.
I would imagine that at some point we're gonna have humans that are just the fact checkers for the AI,
Yeah.
right? To see when it's going off the rails and where if a company's thinking about implementing some kind of AI customer service product, how do they like know when that might be happening? Are there flags? Are there anything to be like, "Hey, this was, we don't know exactly how if this is the right way to handle it. We handled it, but like you guys should listen to this call." Especially at the enterprise level where there's probably hundreds of thousands of calls. There's no way to manually review them.
Yeah.
What are those flags that can tell someone that this might be going off the rails, hallucinating, whatever?
There's actually a lot of different things that you can implement. Usually they fall into a few different buckets. One of them is flags, as you mentioned, which is alerting on any conversation that looks bad. And in our product, what we do is we have a bunch of processes that are like looking at every single conversation that comes through and checking against many different criteria as to like, was this person really frustrated? Did we cite internal information? Did we provide not an article when necessary, et cetera, et cetera? Um, but there's also kind of the in the moment kind of flagging, which you can do, which is when you generate a message, you can actually decide on whether or not to send that message. And you can stop that message and basically be like, hey, this doesn't pass all my criteria. We call them guardrails. That's actually a lot more expensive because you have to wait for your entire message to get generated and for you to look at the entire message. And so it makes the user experience much worse.
Right.
And it's a trade-off for different enterprises. Some enterprises are very, very tight-knit, and other enterprises are like, I would like to see some kind of like balance between those two things.
Have you had instances or even know of any from other companies where there was just an egregiously wrong answer to some kind of customer service support thing, and it either cost the company or whatever? Like, it's got to happen, right?
It happens a lot. There was a very famous hallucination where someone, I think this was like a airline. Someone asked for a refund, and the chatbot was just like, yeah, no, happy to give you a refund. And they actually didn't have a refund policy for that. They were like, no, actually, we shouldn't be giving you a refund here. But they went to courts, and the court said, hey, your chatbot said this. It's on your website. You have to uphold this. And after that happened, the whole industry got a little way tighter on everything that you could potentially hallucinate on. So it was actually a positive thing in many respects.
Any, common mistakes that you're seeing with companies who have customer support teams who are thinking about doing this? Like, what are they?
Do you want me to give you went too fast or you went too slow?
Let's start with too slow.
Too slow. Okay. I've seen teams spend 6 to 12 months like building out, here's what's going to happen with my chatbot. I'm going to test internally and I'm going to make sure I test every nook and edge case, and I'm going to put all these guardrails on there, and I'm going to make sure that when it comes out, it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread. And then as soon as they turn it on, it's like someone asked a question that no one has ever thought of, right?
The experts internally who are testing it never thought of the probably most common question.
Right. And it's because like you're not your users usually. Yeah. And like I think going too slowly can be a real hindrance because you end up building stuff or like trying to find solutions to problems that didn't ever exist, and the real problems are out there that you still haven't uncovered yet. So,
But too fast.
too fast. I mean, a lot of hallucinations I've seen. It's like if you do it's not hallucinations in the sense of like, hey, I'm gonna offer you a refund incorrectly, but it's more like, hey, we don't have the ability to understand what what is the actual outcome that you should have here. And so there might not actually be a knowledge article or a tool that you can use for any of these things. And um, if your AI actually goes in multiple times and is like, "Hey, I don't have this information. I don't have this information," we actually internally think of that as bad as a hallucination because like we can't answer your question, right? So I think that if you don't get all of the pieces of context and API calls that you might need and actually implement them into your chatbot, then you're probably not going to get a good result, especially if you're heavy on like, I need to perform some actions in your support.
That makes sense. Okay, so Assembly's been around 7 or so years now, going on 8, I suppose. Any lows that you like, things that you think back of the company of just growing pains or parts where you're like, man, that was a struggle?
A lot of it actually had to do with this interplay between our existing product and our new LLM product. And I think at the time, I was just like so focused on like building an LLM based product that I didn't put in as much time into like how do we bring the company along on this ride. And I think types of things that our team told us, which was like, hey, like we just had our CTO disappear into a room, or it's like, hey, like you used to care about this and you don't care about it anymore. It's like, no, I still care about it, but you might not have the same access to me as you once did.
Yeah.
Um, those are definitely tough times because it was trying to make sure that we were ahead of the curve and like building this stuff out, because that's, I think, where support's going, but also still making sure that we're bringing the whole company along.
And going back, you probably would have done the same thing. You would have just done it with maybe better change management.
Yeah.
And communication is what you're saying, I think.
I think so, because I to this day, I'm like, I'm so glad we have an AI, like an AI suite of products.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the fastest growing part of our business. It's a huge part of where our revenue comes from. I just think that we could have done it better and gotten people bought in more.
We see that in just general in companies adopting AI, right? Everyone thinks it's coming for their job.
Yeah.
You got to do that change management and make sure you're communicating it down. So
Totally.
that makes sense. Okay. Last thing, it's 2030. Customer service teams everyone's been adopting this. Like, what does it look like? Is there a handoff? Has it gotten so good that we don't need even that tier 3, 4 to be able to hand off? Or are we far enough away that that's not even going to be a thought by then?
I think 2030, you will see very few humans in frontline support. I don't think if you ask a question to a chatbot or you send in an email or even if you call, I don't think the default is going to be human. I think the default is going to be an AI. And I think you're only going to see humans when you actually have like a particular issue that requires empathy, or an issue where it's like, hey, I want, like, humans want product knowledge here, or like they want to actively get more information. You're still going to have all the same mechanics of support. You're still going to have things that like don't make sense in the product and you're like, what's going on here? Right? Because like the reason why support exists is kind of to paper over all of stuff that doesn't work, right? So that's always going to exist. It's just that the easy things to paper over that like you actually sometimes kind of want an AI to do, that will probably be handled by an AI. And I think humans are going to be there when you really want like the white glove stuff and you really care about that. Like the Four Seasons still exists and is a great, like people still book the Four Seasons because they want the experience.
Do you think there's going to be a shift towards people needing to be better about building the SOPs and the documentation to load in? Because if we get to this point where there's less and less humans, it's all going to come down to what data we feed the algorithm.
Yeah.
Right. And right now you point some bot at Confluence and it's wildly outdated, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's going to be a larger and larger component as we go on and there's more adoption of these AI tools?
I think 100%. I think so. Because even in our own working style, it used to be so hard for me to get someone to write like a product requirements doc or like a technical design doc. And now it's just like, no, dude, here's my Claude Code template that writes one for you. Like, you just need to put in like these basic pieces and it'll write a good one for you, probably. And I think it'll become a lot easier. Now, is every company going to do it? That's the one where I'm like, I'm not sure. So I still think it's more likely than not that you're going to default to an AI, but I do think that, things take a long time to change, and that might be where it takes some time for that to happen.
All right. John Wang, co-founder and CTO at Assembled. Thanks for being here. Love the conversation. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.